everyone, it's Rachel, and in this video I'll be showing you how to make 5 simple charms using polymer clay, which are perfect for beginners and people just starting out making charms. Before we begin, I wanted to let you know that any of the tools you see me using in this video can easily be replaced by items that you find around the house, including paper clips, safety pins, toothpicks, and bobby pins. Any clay colours that I have chosen to use in this video can also be swapped out for colours that you have available to you. If you are a beginner and find these types of tutorials helpful, please don't forget to also check out the other videos that I have in this Easy Charms for Beginners series on my channel. So the first design that I'm showing you how to make is this puppy. These are the polymer clay colours that I'm going to be using. To make this little dog or puppy, you want to start off with your base colour, which is going to be the main colour of the head, and roll your polymer clay in the palms of your hands to shape it into a nice round ball. Once you have done that, you can use your fingers to press your clay down slightly on your work surface to create a dome, as this is going to be a flat back charm, meaning that all the details are on the front and it has a flat back, as the name suggests. Now take the colour that you're going to be using for the ears and break this up into 2 even-sized balls. To shape the ears, flatten these balls down and then pinch one side of the clay with your fingers to create a teardrop shape, and then just simply repeat this with both pieces of clay. You'll then want to take a blade and trim off the wider part of your teardrop to create a flat surface, and this will make it a lot easier to connect our ears to the head. You can then position the ears on either side of the head, pressing down the clay as you do to connect it together. So this is what the puppy currently looks like. Next, I am using the same colour as I used for the ears to create a little patch on the dog's face. Simply take a ball of this polymer clay and flatten it down. Now moving on to the face, take your colour of choice. I'm going to be using black polymer clay and roll this into a snake on your work surface. You can then trim off 2 even-sized sections and roll this clay between your fingers to create 2 even-sized balls, which are going to be used for the eyes. Go ahead and attach these to the head, and then you can flatten them down with your fingers to connect them on. To create a little nose and mouth, I'm going to be using some more black polymer clay, and I'm rolling this one even thinner this time. This can take a little bit of practice to get your clay nice and thin, but just continue stretching and rolling the clay until you get it to the size or the thickness that you like. As you can see, I also added on a little oval piece of black clay for the nose, and then here I'm also rolling 2 little pink balls, and I'm positioning these on either side of the eyes for the little cheeks. If you would like to turn your puppy design into a charm, you can go ahead and add an eye pin. Eye pins can be bought from craft stores, or you can shape them yourself using pliers and some wire. Push the eye pin into the top of your charm, and then you want to go ahead and bake your puppy in your oven according to your package's instructions. I always lay down a sheet of baking paper on my tray and then cover the charm with some foil that looks like a little tent, and that way the heat is evenly spread around as it's baking. After baking, when the clay has cooled down, I then take my super glue and I remove the eye pin from the charm, add the super glue to the very end, and then stick it back inside to make it nice and secure. So this is what the little puppy or the dog looks like once it's completely finished. As you can see, it's a super simple but very cute little flat back charm. You can even use the techniques that I taught you to create a 3D version, and then you can also create a body to go with the puppy as well. Next up, I'm going to be showing you how to make this pear charm. These are the colours of polymer clay that I'm going to be using. Firstly, start off with a light green colour or a bright green colour, whatever look you're going for, and roll the clay into a ball, and then pinch one side of your polymer clay to create the shape of the pear. We want our pear to have a pointed top part, but also make sure that we leave the bottom of the design nice and rounded. Just like I am here, continue using your fingers and your work surface as you need to pat and stretch the clay until you're happy with the shape. To create the pear's stalk, I'm going to be taking this brown polymer clay and I'm rolling a small ball of this clay on my work surface to create a long teardrop shape. I'm then using my blade to trim off the pointed part, so then here I'm left with the top part, and then this is what I'm going to be connecting onto the very top of my pear. If you do need to make this part nice and strong for functionality purposes, I do suggest using some liquid clay to attach it on, or even have a piece of wire in the center as reinforcement for the stalk. Next up, to create a leaf, I'm taking a darker green polymer clay and I'm pinching a small ball into another teardrop shape, but this time I am flattening it down, and then I'm also taking my needle tool to add a slight indent down the center. Once you have created your leaf, you can then position it at the top of your pear right beside the stalk and then just pat it down to connect them together. If you would like to make your design into a charm, go ahead and add an eye pin into the clay, and then it's time to bake it in your oven according to your package's instructions. Here you can see that I've placed my pear on my baking tray and then I've created the little foil tent. After baking, I'm taking some super glue and I'm using this on the eye pin to make it nice and secure. So just pull the eye pin straight out of the clay, add some super glue to the very end, and then pop it back in to let it dry. So here is what the finished pear charm looks like. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Of course, this one is a 3D charm, but it could also be made into a flat back design if that's what you're looking for. Next up, I'm going to show you how to make a cupcake charm. So these are the colors that I'm going to be using on my design today. Starting off with my purple polymer clay, this is what I'm going to be using for the base of the cupcake. So I've rolled the clay into a ball and then here I'm shaping it on my work surface. You can see that I'm using my fingers to roll the sides of the clay and almost create a pot kind of shape where one end is going to be more narrow than the other. I'm then going to be creating some indents in the clay. Now I've taken this diagram from one of my older videos, but pretty much I'm going to start off by creating 4 indents at the quarter marks, and then I'm going to add 4 more indents in between each of these so that there are 20 in total. To do this, I'm using my needle tool and I'm just pressing it into the sides of the clay from the bottom and rolling my tool up towards the top. So now that I've created the 4 main indents, I'm then adding 4 more in between each section. When you're doing these, you want to try and make them as evenly spaced as possible. So this is what my base currently looks like. Now to make it look even better and more connected to the actual cupcake part, I'm going to be placing my polymer clay in the freezer for a few minutes, and this is going to harden it up. Then straight away when I take it out of the freezer, I'm using my blade to trim off just a tiny section of the top of the base where it's going to be connected to the actual cupcake. This step is of course optional, but I find that doing this creates a really nice clean edge rather than having awkward looking rounded edges. If you do happen to lose any texture on your base, or it does get a little bit misshapen while you're cutting, you can go ahead and reapply the indents as needed. Now to create the actual cake part of our cupcake, I'm taking this vanilla colored clay and I'm starting off with the polymer clay rolled into a ball, and then I'm shaping it into a dome on my work surface using my fingers to shape the top part while the bottom is going to remain flat. To add some texture to the cupcake, I'm going to be using the bristles of a toothbrush, but you can also use the bristles of a paintbrush, or even a scrunched up piece of aluminium foil works really well too. To add the realistic cupcake texture, I'm just pressing the bristles all over the top of the clay, making sure that I cover each part. Then you can take your base and your cake and join them both together. Now it's time to move on to the toppings, and you can really create whatever toppings that you like for your cupcake. I'm going to be making some cream with a strawberry. So I've rolled a piece of white clay into a long coil on my work surface, and then I'm taking my acrylic roller to flatten this down. If you don't own an acrylic roller, you can really use any round surface to flatten your clay down, including the handle of one of your tools or even a round pen or pencil. So here I'm just taking my acrylic roller and really gently rolling it over the clay to get the thickness that I want. You can then use a blade to trim off the excess parts, and then I'm using a long blade to trim off the side parts that are just a little wonky as well. So now that my clay looks like a really long kind of rectangular prism, I'm going to be twisting the clay, and this gives it a swirly look that replicates whipped cream. Once you've done that, you can then roll a small section of this clay into a circle and trim off the excess parts. Go ahead and position the cream onto the top of your cupcake. To create a little strawberry, take a small ball of red or pink clay and pinch one end of the clay to create a small teardrop shape. Once you're happy with your strawberry, you can then place it in the center of the cream. I'm then using my small dotting tool to create some little round indents, and this is to look like the seeds of the strawberry. For an extra detail, I'm also going to be adding a little leaf, so take some green polymer clay and flatten down a ball in your fingers. Pinch one side of the clay to create a teardrop and then add an indent straight down the center. I ended up actually only adding one of the leaves to my cupcake. If you would like to make your design into a charm, go ahead and add an eye pin into the clay, and then it's time to bake it in your oven according to your package's instructions. Here you can see that I've placed my cupcake onto my baking tray and I've added my foil tent, and I'm just going to go ahead and bake it. After baking, take some super glue and use this to secure the eye pin. So just pull the eye pin straight out of the clay, add some super glue to the very end, and then pop it back in to dry. Here is what my cupcake charm looks like once it's completely finished. Cupcakes are always a lot of fun to make, and you can really customize them in lots of different ways by adding different toppings and using different colors. For our next easy charm, I'm going to be showing you how to make a bow. So for this simple charm design, you really only need to be using one color. I'm going to be using this pink polymer clay. You want to start off by having 2 even-sized balls of clay, and then to shape these into the main parts of the bow, roll this clay on your work surface by applying pressure to the ends with your fingers so that the ends are pointy and the middle part stays wide. You can then use your acrylic roller or another rounded tool to flatten these pieces of clay down. Next up, we are going to curl these pieces of clay over and almost fold them in half so that the 2 points are connected together. Use a blade or another sharp tool to trim off the very center, and then you can use one of your tools like a needle tool to create some slight indents in the clay on both sides. Now we are going to create the center part of the bow, so take some more clay and roll it into a snake on your work surface. Use a roller to flatten this clay down, and then using a long blade you can trim off any of the uneven or excess parts on the sides. Now go ahead and wrap this around the very center of the bow and connect the join at the back. Try to pat this clay down as much as possible to make it look nice and neat. Finally, we are going to create the parts of the ribbon sticking out from the bottom of the bow. So again, I created some flat strips of clay, and this time you want to cut a little triangle out of the bottom of each one. Again, turn your bow over and smooth down all the different parts and little creases. If you do find this part a little bit difficult, you can also use a cotton bud with some nail polish remover or acetone on it, and this will also help smooth the clay out as well. If you'd like to make your design into a charm, go ahead and add an eye pin, and then you can bake it in your oven according to your package's instructions. After baking, take some super glue and you can use it to secure the eye pin. So remove the eye pin from the charm, add a little bit of glue to the very bottom, and then pop it back in to let it dry. So this is what the finished bow charm looks like when it's done. This one, of course, is a very simple design using just one color, and it is more of a flat back charm with all of the detail being on the front. One fun thing about bows is that you can even make miniature versions to add to other little designs like chibis. The final design I'm going to be showing you how to make today is this rainbow shooting star. So these are the colors that I'm going to be using to create the star. Starting off with the colors of clay I'm going to be using for the actual rainbow part, I'm taking each ball of clay and rolling it on my work surface to create a nice rounded teardrop. I'm then repeating this process with each color so that they all end up being the same size and thickness. Next up, you want to place these colors side by side to connect them together. And then I also like to use the side of my blade or just one of my tools to kind of push them all together and make them all nice and snug. Now take the color that you're going to be using for your star. I'm using this bright yellow for mine. Start off with your clay rolled into a ball and then flatten it down with your fingers. We then want to create 5 points by pinching the sides of the clay. So start off by using your thumb and your index finger on both hands to create 3 points, with the bottom still quite rounded. And then you can rotate your star and add the final pinch to create the additional 2 points. This is pretty much a process of continuing to pinch and flatten down your star until you have your desired shape. It can look pretty messy and wonky to begin with, but you just have to keep pinching and flattening and rotating it all around until you get it how you like. Once you do have a rough star shape starting to form, you can then place it down on your work surface and begin making it look more rounded using your fingers to smooth out the clay. So when you're happy with how your star looks, you can then simply attach it onto the little rainbow we made before by pressing them together. If you would like to make your design into a charm, go ahead and add an eye pin, and then it's time to bake this clay in your oven according to your package's instructions. After baking, take some super glue and you can use it to secure the eye pin inside of the clay. So here is what my finished rainbow shooting star charm looks like, and I really like the way that this design turns out. I have made it quite a lot in the past. The trickiest part of this is of course the star, which can take a lot of practice, but it does look really effective once you have mastered the skill. And then there you have it. Here are all 5 polymer clay charms that I showed you how to create in today's Easy Charms for Beginners tutorial. If you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel for lots more crafty videos. Don't forget to check out the other videos in this series to get lots more inspiration and charm ideas. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.